We've got our criminal mischief in the nighttime and theft during the nighttime. That's the legislature assuming that things that happen at night are scarier. And that's really the only time, since we don't have the puppy defense. We don't have
I wish we did, though. I mean, you need to be able to defend your dog. That's just my position.
Let's work on it.
Yes.
2027 legislative session.
Yes.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we are discussing whether Tennessee just became the friendliest state in the entire country for shooting to protect your property. Stick around, we're going to go through Tennessee's new law. We're going to talk through whether or not they just surpassed Texas, which was the best property defense state in the country. And if you're a Texan, you're especially going to want to watch, because we are going to break down Texas's law in detail so you still know what you can do. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button. And don't forget to join us over at armedattorneys.com. Join the Insider newsletter. This is the kind of detailed breakdown we like to send out in a newsletter. So, Leslie Cross.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
I think it's very interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting to see if it gets signed and goes into law. If it does, though, I mean, there's some pretty bold new things. And then there's one line in there that I think is going to cause quite a bit of problems for people.
Yeah, we got some hot takes on this one. So just to give you an idea, this is Tennessee's SB 1847. This was passed by the Senate in Tennessee on April 21st. The same version passed by the House on April 23rd. And as we film today, this is April 28th, it has not yet been signed by the governor, but assuming it does get signed by the governor, it's going to go into effect July 1st. So what does this do? It has taken deadly force law, specifically as to property in Tennessee, and really opened the doors for when you might be justified to use deadly force. Okay, so I think it's worth, Samir, if you will flash up the law here, I think it's worth you actually taking a look, and I'm going to read the operable provision here, and then we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So we've got, except as provided in subsection C2, a person is justified in using deadly force against another if they'd be justified in using force under subsections A or B. Those are just their force, force provision statutes for terminating interference with property or a trespass. So you have to first be justified to use force. That's very typical. And then next, B, when and to the degree the person reasonably believes deadly force is immediately necessary to prevent or terminate the other's actual or attempted, get ready for it, trespass.
Wow.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll go through the whole thing, but sidebar, arson, damage to property, including damage to livestock, burglary, theft, robbery, or aggravated cruelty to animals. And I'll tell you, this is verbatim from Texas law here. And C, you reasonably believe the property cannot be protected or the other's actions terminated by any other means, or the use of force other than deadly force to protect or terminate the other's actions would expose the person or third person to a risk of death or serious bodily injury. So before we talk about the exclusion, that's the meat of it. And man, there are a lot of times that you're going to potentially be able to use deadly force. But why is the word potentially important, though?
Well, I mean, with any sort of defense, right? Defense of property, defense of third parties, self-defense, there's always that part about reasonableness. And it says that. It says to the degree the person reasonably believes deadly force is necessary. And so that's what a prosecutor always is going to argue, is that your use of force, deadly force, was not reasonable given the circumstances. Conversely, defense attorneys, we're always going to argue that your use of force, deadly force in these circumstances were reasonable. So I think that's what it's going to come down to. And then also, attempted trespass. I'm sure there's going to be arguments on what constitutes a attempted trespass. So that'll be interesting. And this part about the aggravated cruelty to animals was really big to me. I mean, the number of calls I've had where people have said, well, if someone's attacking my dog, can I use deadly force to defend them? And, unfortunately here in Texas right now, your dog is technically your property. Although, trust me, I am probably the dog lover of the office. So, I mean, I'm going to defend my dog in any means necessary. But technically in Texas, your dog is your property. They're not a person. So it's kind of hard to answer. I always tell people if you're that close to your dog and someone's using deadly force against your dog, your life is probably in jeopardy too, right? I mean, you're probably really defending yourself not your dog, right?
Wink. No, but I mean, I think that provision is very important. And I agree with you. The trespass portion of it is potentially problematic. But like you said, it's reasonable. It's to the degree that you reasonably believe.
Right.
And that's why, I watched some other YouTubers talk about this law. I watched the floor debate. I read some of the articles that are coming out of Tennessee about it. And you'll see that the anti-gun position, or the sort of more restrictive position, is like, well, you just legalized people shooting over all these things. But that is not what this law does. That is not what self-defense laws do.
Right.
What they do, because it is all couched as your reasonable belief. So what this law has done is say, not that it's legal to shoot someone over a trespass, but that it's not illegal to shoot someone over a trespass. And then once you do it, you better hope that that is what a hypothetical, ordinary, and reasonably prudent person would have done as well. Because if it's not, you're going to go to prison. You broke the law. So this isn't a free-for-all. This is we're not automatically going to send you straight to jail for protecting your property. We're going to let a jury of your peers, and we're going to let the community decide whether or not your actions were reasonable, which frankly, that's how it should be.
Sure. I mean, it should be. We had this come up in our last trial. I mean, we were arguing defense of property, and interesting, the judge actually was trying to make the argument that there wasn't a defense of property argument, because he was trying to say that at the time that the deadly force was used, that there was still our client wasn't defending their property. Not true. And we still got the defense of property put into the jury charge. But
if that judge could have rewritten the penal code during trial to use it against us, he would have.
He would have, 100%. But I mean, that's how critical some of these things are, is that it's down to the seconds of, were you still defending your property at that moment? Like I said, our client definitely was still defending his property at that moment, and the judge was completely wrong. But those are the situations that you're in when you're using a justification like this. A jury gets to sit and dissect your actions and the decision you made in a split second. They get to sit there and go over it and over it and over it and over it. You didn't have that moment to do that. They do.
No, and I mean, to Leslie's point, in that trial, our client's defensive incident, I mean, you could argue he went from self-defense to defense of others to defense of property back to self-defense within the span of about 30 seconds.
Absolutely.
So how do you parse that? How do you parse that? I mean, really, that is why an expansion, in my mind, is always a good thing. Sure. Because unfortunately, the only way to parse it that we have is to put it to the trier of fact, but to take it away from the trier of fact, even to tell a jury, well, if you shot over this incident, you're automatically guilty. You can never be justified. That is not a good thing, because that is not how defensive incidents work. And it's not how human brains work. Right. So here is my problem with this law. And that is this limitation we have. So you might have noticed the first thing I said was, except it's provided in subdivision C2. Well, here's subdivision C2. It is, a person is not justified in using deadly force against another individual under this section if the individual is facing away from the person.
Wow. Facing away.
Which sounds, I guess, reasonable. Like, don't shoot someone in the back, but why isn't that reasonable?
Right. And I mean, I think everyone has heard that. And weirdly, I just had someone call yesterday and ask me about that. We've all heard, don't shoot the person in the back, don't shoot the person in the back. Well, there's actually studies that show that if a person is coming towards you and you are threatened, when your brain starts the process of pulling the trigger on your firearm, it takes longer for you to stop that process than for that person to turn around. So it's absolutely possible that that person is coming towards you, facing you, when you make the decision to pull the trigger, and that person turns before you're able to pull the trigger and your firearm's able to fire, and then they're hit. So we've had people be like, they were facing me. And sure enough, they're shot in the back. And that's the explanation. Yep. But here with this, all day long, a prosecutor is going to say, oh, they got shot in the back. They don't get that justification. No defense of property in this case.
They're excluded from this affirmative defense. The people in Tennessee are going to spend a fortune on expert witnesses on human factors to try to explain this to juries over and over and over again, because it is going to happen constantly. And I'm sure this was this was to placate.
Sure.
Because it seemed to me, even from watching the floor debates, I don't know if you got to see any of it, there were some Republicans even in the Tennessee General Assembly that were very hesitant about this law. And I'm sure this all made them feel a lot better. However, practically speaking, this is going to catch a lot of people who really didn't do anything wrong up in this exclusion to property defense, and I think it's going to end up being a problem. I think that's a good transition into Texas law, where we explicitly tell you you're allowed to shoot people in the back.
Sure.
So maybe Texas is still a winner here.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Leslie, why don't you, since I read before, why don't you read a little bit about 9.42 so we can tell the Texans here what they can do and what they can't do?
Sure. So 9.42, the deadly force to protect property in the Texas Penal Code. We'll start with subsection 2. Basically, subsection 1 says you'd be justified in using force.
Samir, flash up the Texas law on the screen for us, would you?
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start with section 2, and it says, when and to the degree a person reasonably believes deadly force is immediately necessary to prevent the other's imminent commission of arson, burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, theft during the nighttime, or criminal mischief during the nighttime, or to prevent the other who is fleeing immediately after committing burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, or theft during the nighttime from escaping with the property, and the person reasonably believes that the land or property cannot be protected or recovered by any other means, or the use of force other than deadly force to protect or recover the land or property would expose the actor or another to a substantial risk of death or serious bodily injury.
Yeah. So this is, first of all, in Texas, if you were to shoot someone over a trespass, we don't even give the jury the option, right? Tennessee, the jury has the option. Maybe there is a scenario out there in which shooting a trespasser is reasonable. I think most juries are going to say, if they're just standing there trespassing, probably not. There's going to be something really aggravating, like, you know who they are and they've already threatened to kill you, and you can see that they have a gun, but that gun isn't pointing at you in a way that is a life threat quite yet. I mean, there are aggravating factors, but for the most part, I think Texas assumes at least that most trespass are not going to be reasonable, and we don't even give the jury the option. So we look at the actual crimes that are generally also life threats: arson, burglary, robbery. We've got our criminal mischief in the nighttime and theft during the nighttime. That's the legislature assuming that things that happen in night are scarier. And that's really the only time, since we don't have the puppy defense. We don't have
I wish we did, though. I mean, you need to be able to defend your dog. That's just my position.
Let's work on it.
Yes.
2027 legislative session.
Yes.
But, this is where those things sort of get wrapped up. Like if you are hurting a puppy at nighttime, well, that is criminal mischief at nighttime. Sure. I mean, it's your property. And if you have to take the dog to the vet, then that's property damage to you. That's criminal. I mean, it's horrible to say that about your dog, but that's, criminal mischief at nighttime. If you're trying to steal someone's livestock at nighttime, that's theft in the nighttime. So we do catch a little bit of what the Tennessee law here also catches. But I like that we add to it that if you had to shoot someone in the back here, again, it's put to the jury to decide if it was reasonable. But if they're fleeing with your property after committing any of these property crimes, well,
there you go.
We not only do we not prevent it,
and the nighttime part, that came up in our last trial too.
Everything came up.
It really
It sounds like we're making it up.
Right. I mean, the case could have been like a law school prompt for some sort of essay or something with the number of defenses that were there and the issues that were there. But nighttime in Texas ends 30 minutes before the sun rises is what the definition says. And we had to establish that this happened prior to that 30-minute mark, and really went back and forth with the state on exactly trying to figure out what time this was. And we had to put in evidence to show what time the sun rose on the day that this occurred.
Yes. And we had the proper way to do that was to get the judge to take judicial notice of what the actual recorded sunrise was. And that judge hated it so much, we weren't sure he was going to do it.
He did, though. The one thing he actually
did. That says the one time you ruled for us, I think. So anyway, if you are a Texan, the thing to remember here is this is still put to the jury for reasonableness analysis. Whereas if you're a Texan, you're defending against a person crime. Like, let's say you are trying to kill me.
Sure.
And I establish at trial that you attempted murder. Well, the jury is going to be told, if we did in fact establish that you tried to kill me and that's why I shot you, That's what they're looking for. And if they find that that attempted murder did occur, they must presume that my self-defense was reasonable and therefore find me not guilty.
Yep.
But for property crimes, we don't do that. So you've got a theft in the nighttime, and that's what we establish at trial. Well, that dead guy committed a theft in the nighttime, and that's why my client responded. Great. That's just the precursor to the jury then evaluating whether you were reasonable. So it's like we add this whole other step to the property issues. We don't give you those legal presumptions of reasonableness like we do in the person context. And so it's here, it's in Texas law, Texas until and unless Tennessee the governor signs this bill, was the best property state in the whole country. But still, these aren't presumptions. They are simply prior authorizations that can then be second guessed. So we always, I mean, as weird as it sounds to say, like, I'll try to encourage someone, like, if you can, if you think that life threat is coming 15 seconds from now and you can say it was an attempt, like if you're like, oh boy, I think he's pulling a gun or he's about to, I mean, couching it in terms of the life threat instead of the property threat does a whole lot for you in terms of your jury charge at trial.
Yeah. So, I mean,
don't get yourself killed waiting, but
Right. Exactly. And I think that's the big thing that it always comes down to is this last part of the Texas law that says, and the use of force other than deadly force would expose that actor to substantial risk of death or serious bodily injury. So, I mean, if you're sitting there and you're like, well, I mean, I guess I could have punched him, but he also was holding a knife. So, but again, then you're defending yourself.
Life threat.
Right, exactly. And I think we're probably going to get some comments about the Castle Doctrine. Obviously, we still have the Castle Doctrine in Texas.
Separate.
That is not this. That's not what this statute is. So obviously, that still applies as well.
If you'd like us to do an episode on Castle Doctrine, comment below.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that's all we've got today. We hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and always help us fight our anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And until then, we're the Armed Attorneys.